everybody. Welcome to MindMatters. Thank you for coming in full force and being on time even. My name is Glenn. I'm the master class host, and I'm also the co-founder of Breakthrough Therapy, of which as an organization, we are hosting this program here tonight. So it gives me great pleasure right now to introduce our masterclass VIP speaker. Her name is Rona Tan. She's a senior counselor. She has been in this field for a long, long time. Now she's also a lecturer in SUSS. She's a Satir Therapy Specialist. She has a diploma in Satir Systemic Family Therapy, postgrad deep ed, and so on and so forth. So please help me to welcome Rona Tan. Rona, over to you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Appreciate your warm welcome. You know, it's something which is very much on my heart, which is to help empower the community with the Satir model, because this is actually a very powerful model. And I want to be able to help everybody to understand this so that you can break negative thoughts, actions, and behavior and use principles from the Satir transformational systemic therapy model pioneered by Virginia Satir, so that we can all be more congruent, more empowered, and more assertive. And we also want to be able to adopt constructive behaviors to transform ourselves and others. Okay, so I really want to thank you for coming, because you could be at home, watching Netflix or playing video games, and today is a very cold and rainy day. You could be napping. Okay, so I would like to thank you and appreciate you for making time to come for this. And the workshop will be engaging and interactive. My style is to use humor, so I will use some tools which are more interactive in nature. Okay, so I hope you will enjoy the workshop. Now, who is Virginia Satir? She's formerly a principal, and she had a heart for people. So she studied family and marital therapy and psychotherapy, and she pioneered the Satir model. So her belief is that we never outgrow our need for growth. And she wrote many books, and she also was a contemporary of Salvador Minuchin, of Jay Haley, and of all the other great family therapists. So today's master class will cover firstly some theory, right? Because I note that there are actually many counselors in the room. Thank you so much for coming, and also many students who are studying counseling. Okay, so we will look at the therapeutic goals and beliefs of the Satir model, as well as the iceberg. And we will also, please pardon me. Okay, and we will also look at the personal iceberg model, which is what she pioneered, and which is a very elegant and powerful model. This will enable us to understand the intrapsychic functioning of a human being. We will also look at the intrapersonal relationships between people. We will use the 5 A's to help provide intervention. We will look at the survival stances and coping stances. We will explore the impact of childhood, the impact of family of origin, and the impact of family rules. Because Satir believed that dad, mom, and this primary triad of dad, mom, and child greatly influences each person and their coping patterns. Okay, after that, we will look at incongruent and congruent communication, and how to turn negative thoughts into positive thoughts, as well as how to turn negative behavior into positive behavior. Finally, we'll look at how to respond in a congruent, non-reactive, yet assertive way, so that we can still be calm and centered and grounded, even in response to negative people and negative experiences. The first icebreaker we're going to do, okay, just have fun with this, okay? We're going to type into the chat box, right, your replies, okay? There's no right or wrong answer. Don't worry about that. Okay, so what happens is we have scenario 1, where after Christmas and Chinese New Year, there's a time of feasting, right? You can eat turkey, too many pineapple tarts. And so when you step onto the weighing scale or look into the mirror, oh dear, it has exploded. Okay, so what is a negative thought that you have when you look at the weighing scale or look at the mirror? And then what is the negative action or behavior that might arise, that might follow up as a result of the negative thought? Okay, can you type into the chat box? It's just an icebreaker, so that we can look at the impact of negative thoughts and consequently our negative actions. Let's take a look at your responses. Oh, okay. Elsie says, "Aya, ate too much again. Carol, I'm growing fatter. I need to diet for the next week. Charlene says, stop eating for a few days. Ayo, okay. And Florence says, oh, you're also fat, must control again. Kev says, why am I such a glutton? Okay, very good, everybody. Very humorous. Okay, well done. Correct. So, right, we often may actually respond in very negative ways, right? Say, oh, I'm bad, I ate too many pineapple tarts, I'm defective, I'm too fat, I'm lacking, etc. And then we need to actually replace these negative cognitions with positive cognitions, such as I'm okay as I am. I do have good qualities. I may have put on a bit of weight, but that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Okay. And when you actually have negative thoughts, it can often result in negative behavior, right? Because the self-esteem is low and the self-worth is low. The kind of negative behavior that comes out would be fighting, violence, aggression, bullying, excessive anger. You go home and vent your anger on your wife, your children, okay? Maybe you kick the cat, right? Because you're so fed up, okay? Now, interestingly, anger and sadness turned inwards can result in actions such as self-cutting and self-harm. In its worst case scenario, that would be suicidal behavior, right? Okay, other negative behavior would be drugs, excessive alcohol use, anorexia, bulimia, and addictions to gaming, sex, porn, and other negative coping methods. So how do we, as practitioners, right, as counselors, or as people who are looking for ways to help our loved ones, use the Satir model to address these negative thoughts and behaviors and to break them? Okay, what we have to look at the goals first. Okay, there are 4 goals in the Satir model. First goal is to raise the client's self-esteem. Secondly, help the client to be their own choice maker. Third, help the client to be responsible. Fourth, help the client to be congruent. Okay, her therapeutic beliefs are that change is possible. And even if external change is limited, internal change is possible. And we all have internal resources we need to cope successfully and to grow. So all of us, you and myself, we all have strengths. We all have internal resources. Okay, so we want to look at these internal resources and strengths, and especially as counselors or as family members or friends helping people who are depressed or sad, we want to help them understand their strengths. Third, we have choices, especially in terms of responding to stress. So a lot of the emphasis in today's class will be also on how to help our clients or our family members generate choices. Okay, always remember there must be more than 2 choices. There must be more than 2 choices so that the client does not feel stuck. Okay, fourth, hope is a significant component or ingredient for change. 5, therapy needs to focus on health and possibilities instead of pathology. Okay, so Satir is a very positive, humanistic therapist. She always believed that every human being can grow. And that's why I love her model so much. Even after studying so many models, I still find that hers is very empowering and very positive. Okay, 6, the problem is not the problem. Coping is the problem. Okay, so if you look at the scenario earlier in scenario 1, the problem of being overweight is not the problem, all right? It's how we cope with the problem. Okay, 7, most people choose familiarity over change, especially during times of stress. So most people prefer to do the same thing over and over again, even if it hurts them. Okay, and especially when they're under stress, they sometimes find it very difficult to change. Somebody ever said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and not doing something different. And yet people choose to do this. So Satir was able to be very insightful and she recognized this. 8, feelings belong to us. We are responsible for our feelings. 9, we cannot change past events, only the impact they have on us. 10, process is the avenue of change. Content forms the context in which change can take place. 11, congruence and high self-esteem are the major goals in the Satir model. Okay, so there's a lot of emphasis on being congruent and helping clients to have high self-esteem. It's a very powerful model for self-development as well. One reason I love this model so much is I've applied it to myself. I learned the principles and then I explore them and I think of, okay, how can I do things differently? How can I think differently? What are my strengths? And how can I choose to do things in a way which will help me rather than hurt me? Okay, very quickly, to anchor this first portion, 3 key points. One, as a counselor, if you're coming here today as a counselor or as somebody who is studying counseling and you want to be an aspiring counselor, ask the client, okay, what are your strengths? What are your strengths, okay? And how would you use these strengths to self-actualize and to reach your full potential? Now, this is very, very powerful. I've used this technique with students who are depressed, who are anxious. I've used this technique with inmates, with people who come from very broken past, you know, and they cannot see any good in themselves. And I would start off by saying, I appreciate these are your strengths, and then I would name them. Okay, and this comes after listening to their story, listening to their narrative very, very carefully and very with great sensitive attunement. And then you pull out the strengths and you reflect it back to the client. You will amplify the strengths. For example, you know, you are a very kind lady, even though you have been in this relationship where you were battered, but you are still very resilient and you are a strong mom and you love your children so much and you are very hardworking. You work 2 jobs to support the family. Okay, so this will really boost the client's self-worth and give them hope. Now, if you're coming here today for your loved one or for yourself, that is great. You are empowering yourself, okay? And so what you can do is you can name your strengths and you appreciate yourself and you can journal. You can read an empowering book and you can visualize, okay? This is a technique I teach my clients and I use for myself as well. I will visualize myself achieving that dream, whether it be a job, a personal life, or my home, to decorate it, to make it beautiful, okay? Or you can use this in sports as well. So you draw or you paint and you have a vision board, okay? You can use a vision board and your mind's eye to visualize that. Okay, right now I'd like to pause and I'd like to invite you all to type in your strengths, okay? Everybody, I think there are about 200 of you here today. Please type in into the chat box what you appreciate about yourself, okay? It's not being boastful, it's not being arrogant, it's very good self-esteem. Because only when we're able to recognize our own strengths, right, can we feel good and can we have good thoughts, positive thoughts, and positive actions. Says creative, okay? Sally is kind, and Hui Ming says gratefulness. Okay. Jenny, wonderful to see you, Jenny. Thank you so much, okay, for coming. I'm taking each day slowly and appreciate whatever comes my day to me with gratitude. Wonderful, Jenny. Yes, mindfulness, right? Okay. Patrick says good listener. Wonderful. Okay. Serene is caring. And Sharon is resilient. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Wonderful that you are typing in those strengths. I would like to encourage you to continue with these, that when you are at home after, you know, this workshop, when you are, you know, over the weekend, if you have a bit of time, just journal and then, you know, just visualize that dream that you want to come true. You may think this is a very hard dream to come true. I don't think it can happen, but I'll be very frank with you. Everything is possible, okay? With God, nothing is impossible. And by God's grace, I wrote a book in 2016. Glenn was one of the people I interviewed. He very kindly gave his time for the book, and it was published in 2016, Victory Over Addictions. Never in my life did I think I would write a book and it be published, but it happened. So I just want to encourage all of you, you know, work on your strengths and believe that you can achieve your dreams. Okay. All right. Application 2. We want to help our clients to be good choice makers. So we need to generate at least 3 choices. You cannot have just 2 choices. No. Okay. That will not work. For example, if you think of our first scenario about the overeating pineapple tarts and turkey, right? Now, if you generate 2 choices, example, oh, I'm fat, therefore I'm ugly. That doesn't help, right? Okay. I'll just wallow in self-pity. No, it doesn't work. So you need to generate at least 3 choices, which was what many of you did. Example, I can do intermittent fasting. Example, I can exercise. Example, I can ask my friend to go out with me for a walk. Or example, I can choose to stay plump. I don't care. More of me to love. Okay, I'm still handsome and I'm still pretty, even though I'm overweight. Okay, so you must know that when we work with clients, right, a lot of times why they're stuck, why clients are stuck is because they believe there are only 2 choices. They believe there are only 2 choices. For example, for a girl who has been dumped by her boyfriend and she's very sad, right? She thinks I'm useless, I'm worthless. And then the action might be self-cutting or worst case scenario, suicidal behavior, right? Because she thinks, no, he doesn't love me anymore. So it's the end of the world, okay? Now, if you think like that, then of course you will feel stuck, right? So instead, you have to help the client to generate at least three choices. For example, instead of wallowing in self-pity and saying I'm no good, or kind of like just staying home and feeling lousy, why not go out, make more friends? Okay, reframe it as a chance to find the love of my life, and that there's something better out there. Okay, so and another fourth choice could be she could go and learn a new skill, or a fifth choice is she could learn how to be happy with herself and content with singlehood. Okay, so we want to remind ourselves, right, that we always have choices. If you are here for your loved one, help your loved one to generate choices. Listen. Okay, the most important thing is to listen, to empathize, because only when we reflect back the feelings and empathize with the sadness, the anger, the disappointment, the self-rejection, will we connect. Okay, Satir believe a lot in connection. Okay, and so we want to help them to not be stuck, to brainstorm, to think out the box. The application, what you see is what you get, congruent. Okay, when we're able to express ourselves in a calm, non-reactive way externally, we don't overreact, okay, but we respond congruently and assertively. So for example, for women who are, or men who are, bullied because they are seen to be overweight, instead of reacting, say, why do you say that I'm overweight? Okay, and you get very depressed, etc. You could respond congruently and assertively by saying that, I don't find that to be a very empowering statement, and I don't think you should, speak about others in that way. We'll go into greater detail about this as the course progresses, because we'll talk about how self, others, and the context can be used in terms of responding to negative people and negative situations. Okay, now we'll look at the personal iceberg model. I'm going fairly fast because I want to have more time for Q&A. Okay, so Satir was extremely innovative. She was a radical thinker. She was the one who pioneered this personal iceberg model. Okay, and what this shows is the human being. The human being, 1/10 is above the waterline, the behavior, our actions, and our coping stances. Okay, but 9/10 are actually below the waterline, below the surface. So when you see someone, for example, fighting, or taking drugs, or having excessive alcohol use, or self-cutting, or having suicidal behavior, that is only the action that is 1/10 above the waterline. But 9/10 below the surface are actually what is deep inside the human being. Okay, and what these different layers are will be, firstly, feelings. Okay, where you have all of these feelings are universal. Okay, as human beings, whether we are Indian, Chinese, Malay, Eurasian, Caucasian, African, Eskimo, we all have feelings, and there's nothing wrong with feelings. It does not mean that sadness or anger are bad feelings. No, feelings are neutral. Okay, so we have joy, excitement, anger, hurt, fear, sadness, etc. The next layer is feelings about feelings. Now, this is a very interesting part, because we could feel ashamed about being sad, right? So this feeling about feeling then affects the way we respond to life situations. For example, many men have been socialized by the family and by the wider society to not show sadness, to not cry, right? Because it's not macho, right? It's bad for guys to cry. So when they cry or they feel sad, they don't express it out. They suppress it. They deny it, right? Because they have feelings about this feeling, which is shame or guilt, or bad feelings about being sad. All right, deeper down is perceptions. Perceptions are how we see the world, our beliefs, our assumptions, our subjective reality, our thoughts, our ideas, and our values. So our perceptions do affect the way we think, feel, and the way we behave. Each layer of the iceberg is interacts with each other. And as a counselor, when you explore the iceberg, you can explore each part as well as look at how each part affects the other part. Okay, now deeper still is the expectations. Now, many people get stuck in life, are very unhappy, or very angry, or very upset because of unmet expectations. Because of unmet expectations. Now, these unmet expectations or unresolved expectations make the person feel very frustrated because of something the other person did not do, or something that they expected from themselves, which they could not reach, or they have expectations from others that are too unrealistic, which frustrate them. Okay, so I find the expectation layer also very, very powerful, because if we can look at how we deal with our unresolved expectation or unmet expectation, and we learn how to meet these expectations in a healthy way, we will be actually very happy. We will be able to have more positive thoughts and more positive behavior. I'll unpack this later in greater detail. Okay, the final second last layer is the yearnings, and this is extremely powerful, because the deeper you go into the iceberg, the deeper you are getting into the psyche of a person, and the deeper you are getting into their being, into their self, into their personhood. Okay, so many counselors or people, the general public, will only look at the feelings or the thoughts and the behavior. However, they may miss out the yearnings. Okay, and the yearnings again are universal, and they are concepts such as I want to be loved. All human beings need to be loved and want to be loved. They want to love and be loved. It is a very common, valid human need. Okay, so another yearning is acceptance. I yearn to be accepted. I wish to be accepted. I wish to belong. I want to be creative. I wish to connect. I dream of having freedom of choice. Okay, so this layer of the iceberg is very, very powerful. I often will ask my clients, in fact, I always ask my clients, what is your dream? What is your wish? What is your yearning? Okay, because often they will talk about a lot of problematic behaviors or negative thoughts, but you need a positively directional goal. All right, it is true that the past hurts. It is true that this issue that surfaced currently or from the past is very painful and is a great wound. However, if we only fixate on the wound, or we only concentrate on the wound, we cannot heal, right? We cannot heal. So to heal, we need the connection with another loving human being. That could be a counselor or a friend or a parent, or, a relative, or, somebody significant who is nurturing, who is kind, who is empathetic. Okay, Satir believes a lot in connection. And then you would need to ask them, right? Okay, what is your wish? What is your dream? What do you want to achieve in life? Okay, now the final part is the self, which is the life force, the spirit, the soul, the core, the being. Why is it that certain individuals are more resilient than others? Why is it that even though they may have terrible, catastrophes affecting them, they are still able to bounce back? This is because their life force is very strong. Now, if your client's life force is not strong because of things that happened to them in their childhood or a current trauma, you would need to strengthen that life force. Okay. Now, take note that when we have the icebergs, we have our own personal icebergs, and there is the intrapersonal relationship when two people interact. For example, a counselor and a counselee, husband and wife, parent and child, parent and family members, boss and employee, right? So these would be the intrapersonal relationships. Why is this important for us to know? This is important because if we can be aware that our own iceberg is actually interacting with the clients, right, then we would not be so reactive as if they were to do things which are rather unpleasant, such as raise their voice at us or be rather self-defensive, because we realize that we are actually interacting with another person's iceberg, and 9/10 of it is actually below the surface. Okay, now we will look at the next scenario, which is work. Okay, now this is a very common scenario, I realized, as I reflect on the current situation in many settings. Okay, and the scenario is this: you're passed over for a promotion at work and you got a C for a work review, even though you worked very hard. Your colleague, whom you feel is not as hardworking and not as committed, got a B grade and was still got promoted. Now you feel very angry and you feel very unjustly treated. What are the negative thoughts that go through your mind? Okay, and how do you react and behave negatively? Okay, so for example, do you go home, scold your wife, scold your kids, kick the cat? Yeah, okay. Can you please type into the chat box now? Okay, some possible negative thoughts and negative behavior that can arise. Okay, no right or wrong answer, don't worry, okay? And so just type into the chat box what you sorry, now I'd like you to type in the chat box the negative thoughts, and then also type into the chat box how you would change this negative thought using the Satir model. Okay, so oh, somebody wrote in the chat box, where can they get my book? Thank you so much. Thank you. That is very kind of you. Now the book is out of stock. There were 1,000 copies printed, but thank God for that. But they've all been sold, and 300 were given to the prisons. I'm very grateful that there was it was well received. 50% of the profits were given to Prison Fellowship Singapore and to reach community services to help low-income families and inmates. Okay, so you can read the book from the National Library. The National Library bought 13 copies. 13 copies. Thank you so much for your interest in that book. Okay, so wow, very good, everybody. Very well done. Jasmine says, might as well not work so hard. Maybe I should talk to my reporting officer about it. Very good. Okay. Serene, what did I do wrong? How can I do better? Oh, very good. Very positive. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, Florence says the company is not for me. Quit. Very angry. I don't want to work already. Okay, yes, possible. Huh? Okay, now, yes. C says I feel worthless. I empathize with that. It's true, right? After I think we can all resonate with this. That times when we were passed over for a job promotion or felt unfairly treated at work. Okay, so now, very good that all of you are typing in your answers. Thank you so much. You're doing great. Okay. Okay, guys. Now I would like to invite you to type in, okay, how you would change that negative behavior to change it to a positive thought or change it to a positive action. Okay. It's not easy. I empathize because you're just actually filming, right? Okay, but think about the Satir model. Think about 3 choices, right? So what can you do? Can you write down 3 things that you can do so that you feel that you can address this issue of unfairness? Very good. Edwin says, talk to boss. Kin says, it's a life lesson to make me stronger. Wow, excellent, King. That is very good reframe. Very good internal locus of control. Fantastic. Okay, Derek says, move on to somewhere where you are appreciated. Yes, very good. I resonate with that, Derek. Well done. Christine also says, yeah, move to a better place. Correct. Very good. Okay, and Sharon has a very logical and also very centered kind of response, right? You talk to the boss and look at it from different angles. Very well done, everybody. Okay, I think you guys are really doing really very, very, very well. Okay. Okay, Jenny, I like your humorous approach. I will talk to my RO about my weakness and how to improve. That's very good. And spend money on clothes to make me feel better. Yes, thank you very much. Very good. I can resonate with that. I love Lazada and Shopee also. It is, I'm sure many of us have been doing Shopee and Lazada doing this 11/11 sales and so on. So coping the problem is not the problem, it's how we respond to the problem, right? The problem is not the problem, it's how we respond to the problem. So thank you everybody for your very good responses. Okay, now we will look at resolving unmet expectations as what I mentioned. We will unpack this, okay? The counterproductive method is 1, to feel sorry for ourselves, right? Very common. Oh, I've been unjustly treated at work. Poor me. I'm so poor thing. Okay. 2, blaming others. That stupid boss or that stupid guy. Okay. Etc. Etc. Right. And 3, react with anger. He must have tried to curry favor the boss lah. That's why like that lah. Okay. Boss very against me lah. Boss is very practicing favoritism lah. Okay, and 4, ignoring our unmet expectations. Ignoring would be like, I don't care, doesn't matter to me. Okay, I butch up. Okay, so these are the unproductive, not so helpful ways. Now, the positive methods, which you have all listed, okay, you all have really a very positive mindset. I affirm you for that. And it is, you do not see yourselves as victims, okay, and you're able to reframe. I saw one of the participants did a very good reframe, right, which is, how can I learn from this? How can I do better? Or it's going to make me stronger, all right? It's not going to break me. I'm going to be a stronger person. So you have actually practiced, number 1, let go of unmet expectations, where you reframe and you let go. Number 2, you'll find alternatives to meet your expectations. Alternatives are choices. Remember, right, Satir said at least 3 choices. So you all listed very good examples of choices. Example, to look for a new job, example, to talk it over, example, to go shopping, okay, to make yourself feel better. 3, you want to decide to hold on to the expectation. If you do that, you need to count the cost. Now, one helpful self-talk will be to say, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to get so angry. Yes, even the boss is practicing favoritism, or I've been unfairly treated. It's not worth my health. It's not worth my mental agony. I'm bigger than this, okay? And I will take the higher, classier way. 4th, you go to the yearnings. You want to examine why. Okay, why am I so upset? Does it remind me of something from my childhood where I was also overlooked, or my sibling or my peer was favored by a parent? Okay, so then you try to, through insight, work on that, and then change that negative thought to a positive thought, to say, I'm no longer a child, I'm now an adult, I have a lot of strengths, I'm hardworking, I'm smart, I'm committed. Even if this job, if I'm not appreciated at this job, then I can always look for another job elsewhere. There are many jobs out there. Okay, so in conclusion, we want to meet these expectations in healthy, constructive ways that help us and not hurt us. Okay, now people can say things that hurt us, and these are but it's just a moment by moment thing that we make a choice to have good self-esteem and to respond to their words and behavior in a way that does not beat ourselves up, right? That does not beat ourselves up. So we need to understand the iceberg to have this good self-esteem and self-worth. And then we need to change our unmet expectations, unresolved expectations. We can modulate these expectations so that we will be happier, right? And we can modulate negative thoughts. Why Singaporeans, right, are often so unhappy? I can empathize. It's because we have such high expectations of ourselves, right? We have such high expectations of ourselves. For example, when you were a kid and your mom, and you went back home with your report book and you scored 90 upon 100 for math, and you showed it to your dad or mom, and then they said, only 90 upon 100? Why you couldn't score 100 upon 100? Yeah, so you get so stressed out, right? Because the expectations are overly high and very unrealistic. And as a result, we may have become socialized to respond to life in that way, that it becomes an auto default mechanism, that we think that the only way to happiness is to score 100 marks upon 100 marks. But that is actually impossible, right? Nobody can do that all the time, because we are not machines. We are not machines. And Satir recognized it. Satir said, we are human beings. We are not human doings. We are human beings. We are not human doings. We are not machines. Okay, very quickly, moving on, I'm going to teach you now the 5 A's, the 5 A's. Okay, now these 5 A's are very powerful in helping clients in that we help them to recognize their feelings, to acknowledge their feelings, and not to suppress or deny their negative thoughts, their negative feelings, and not to discount or minimize or negate themselves. Okay, why a lot of people feel unhappy is because they just are denying themselves of their true feelings, and they're not in touch with their true feelings, or they feel nobody truly understands them or truly empathizes or truly connects. So we as counselors, right, we really have this really wonderful job, this noble calling. I always believe counseling is not a job, actually, to be frank. It is a human being connecting with another human being. And that is such an honor. That is such a privilege. I always am so thankful that total strangers can sit in front of me and tell me and share me their deepest heartache, their deepest pain, their stories from their past, and they can trust me. Okay, so I really want to thank you, counselors and students of counseling, for coming today. And also, if you are a loved one of someone having a mental health issue, I want to thank you today for coming, because you love the person, and if you're coming because of you yourself have a mental health issue, I want to appreciate and I want to applaud you, because you are taking control of your life. Okay, you are not seeing yourself as a victim, but you are taking control and working on what is within your control and letting go of what is not within your control. Okay, so back to the 5 A's. What are the 5 A's? They are: 1, awareness. First, you must help the client to be aware. Or if you're coming yourself for this course, you must be aware is your true feeling. You must be aware of your own iceberg. You must be aware of your own auto default mechanisms. And then, and number 2 is you acknowledge. When we are aware, not only do we become aware that we have from unconscious or subconscious to consciousness, but next we have to acknowledge, we have to own it, okay? Yes, I am using placating stance. Yes, I am using a blaming stance, okay? Number 3, we want to accept. What happens is when we accept, it takes away a lot of negative energy. It takes away a lot of negative energy. So for example, I would say, I accept I came from a broken past. I accept that my family was not perfect. I accept that dad and mom were not perfect. They did many things wrong in parenting me. I don't like it, but I accept it. And I'm going to face the future and my present bravely. I'm going to accept my past. I'm going to accept it and I'm going to let go of it so that I can face my present and my future bravely. And I can be in the here and now. I can live my life in the here and now instead of always thinking about the past or worrying excessively about the future. Number 4, we want to appreciate, we want to understand why. Why do I respond in this way? And how can I respond differently? How can I think differently? How can I behave differently? When we think differently and behave differently, we will often feel differently. Okay, it is harder to change feeling, but it is easier to shift the thinking and the actions. Summary, the 5 A's are awareness, acknowledge, accept, appreciate, and finally act. Okay, because we do need to ultimately take action. Otherwise, it is all just theory. Okay, I hope this is helping your learning needs, okay, and meeting your learning needs. Okay, I'll just look mindful of the time. Okay, I think about 5 more minutes, so I'm going to go into the coping stances now. Okay, now there are 4 coping stances that are negative. They are blaming, placating, super reasonable, and irrelevant. The positive coping stance is congruent. Now, when people feel emotionally threatened, then they will go back to a coping stance or communication stance that is auto default. And this was learned when we were children. Okay, this is learned when we were children. So when we were growing up, yes, sorry. Oh, okay. I'll carry on. Sorry for the interruption. Now, when people feel emotionally threatened as children and when we felt unsafe, we learned to respond in a certain way. Okay. And now when we are grown ups, when we are in an unsafe situation, in a current situation, when we feel stressed or threatened, we often revert. We revert to these coping stances. Okay, and these coping stances are called survival stances in the childhood. Now we can learn them from our dad and copy it. Example, dad can be very blaming, and then we follow that, or we can be complimentary. Example, we can placate to please dad. So there's a lot of role modeling. Okay, we try to be congruent, but oftentimes it is very hard. Now this is a process. It starts with the 5 A's, and then we want to make sure that we are aware, okay? Because when we transform our thoughts and our behavior, then we can unlearn, relearn. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the coping stances to unlearn and relearn. The first coping stance is blaming. People who use blaming are very violent, hostile, scolding, putting down, negating, aggressive. They think there's nothing wrong with me. They negate others. They say, oh, it's all your fault. They do not take into account they do not take into account others. Okay, they only think about themselves and the context. Okay, and the stance is they will point, okay, and put the hand on the hip. Satir created that stance in sculpting. Now, when you actually work as a counselor with such people, you want to help them to become more aware of the needs of others and to be empathetic. You can be quite upfront with them. Second stance is placating. Placating is somebody says, oh, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. The blamer will say, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. And the placater will say, yes, it's all my fault. Please love me. Okay. So they're often weak, dependent, or seen as weak. They're dependent. They cannot say no. They're often bullied and they want to be loved at all costs. They don't have boundaries. They discount their own feelings. They need to be kind to themselves. Okay. Now, the placating stance is they will kneel down and say, please love me. We don't have enough time to do that in this workshop, but if you were to attend Satir workshops, they will actually teach you the stances. Their strength is that many of them are kind and caring. Okay, they often ignore their own needs. So when you work with them, you want to empower them to have a sense of self, to have a voice. Okay, and don't just give up on their own thoughts and feelings because they're scared of having conflict. Ask them for their opinions. They are very nice people. Placators tend to be very agreeable. Okay, ask them what are their thoughts, their opinions, and teach them to be assertive. Okay, the super reasonable is somebody who is always correct, always rationalizes. They're very rigid, very principled, very obsessive, very structured, very cold, very robotic. Okay, they discount their own and other people's feelings. They don't even acknowledge their own sadness and disappointment, etc. So for such people, okay, they think in a very black and white way. Now, the stance is you put your hand on your chin and say, I'm so smart. I'm smarter than all of you. Okay. Now you will reach them as counselors through their cognition and teach them. You need to process with them so that they're more in touch with their own feelings and thoughts, and also the thoughts and feelings of others, as well as the context. The last coping stance that's not very helpful is the irrelevant coping stance, where they're a bit erratic, hyperactive, very make inappropriate comments. But on the plus side, they're very fun, spontaneous, creative, they're dreamers. Now, they can discount the other people's feelings, their own feelings, and even the context. They may be the kind who wear red color to a funeral, okay? They are the class clown. They diffuse tension in a room by laughing, okay? And they may also not be in touch with their current reality. So what you need to do is to create emotional safety, help them to recognize their own thoughts, the thoughts and feelings of others in the context, and not to be scared, not to run away. Okay, so you can see a lot of irrelevance there. The congruent coping stance is a person who's alive, healthy, creative, integrated, unique, confident, competent, congruent, has healthy boundaries. You can say no. You can say no nicely, but confidently, calmly. Don't need to shout, don't need to scream, don't need to use vulgar language. People who are congruent are very confident, and they acknowledge their own and other people's feelings and the context. So they're loving, and they can be empathetic and non-reactive. Very quickly, we'll go into family rules. Okay, there are actually 11 in total, but I can only cover a few due to time constraints. If you're interested to find out more, please do go to my YouTube video, Rona Teaching Ministries. I just started this YouTube recently to view full videos. I'll be uploading one on this fairly soon. Okay, one, family rules. Make a list of a dozen of your family rules. Remember, many of them may be implicit rather than explicit, implied. Okay, so for example, in your family, maybe only dad could get angry. Nobody else can get angry. All must be quiet. The ladies, the sons, everyone must be quiet. Only dad is the king. Okay, now, number two, take one family rule at a time, cognitively work through it. Purpose was the family rule to achieve. B, who in the family enforced the rule? How? C, how did the family rule affect you when you were young? D, how did you cope with the family rule? And then think about which family rules have you incorporated into your life that you want to now reconsider and let go. All right. So the letting go is the part that's difficult. I want to encourage you that if, though you can journal about this, but if you want to process it with a counselor, it is actually a powerful way of getting that kind of inner peace and coming to terms with the past. Okay. So now we're going to look at scenario 3, where we talk about how we respond to each other in relationship, how we respond to each other in relationship. Okay, I'm just going to take 5 minutes, and because I want to have more time for the Q&A, so I'll round up in about 5 minutes time. Okay, so the scenario is this. You have a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, son or daughter, and you ask them to help clean the house because the house is very messy. Now, he or she refuses, saying they're too busy. How do you react? 1, do you fly into a rage, scold the person, say it's your fault? B, say sorry, plead for help, and say it's all my fault? C, laugh, make a joke of it, throw darts at his photo because you're so mad, okay? Or D, go into a long scientific lecture and rationalize why the house should be clean. Okay, so what is the coping stance? Very quickly, A is blamer, right? B is placater, C is irrelevance, and D is super reasonable. Okay, now when we are congruent in our communication, we will not spoil the relationship. Incongruent communication is when there is a mixed message, okay? When the true meaning is lost, when the words and body language, non-verbals do not match. So, for example, if you say, I'm not angry, you ask me to clean the house, okay, and you shout, there is no congruence, right? Because they cannot hear the message, they cannot hear the concern, they cannot hear that desire to ask for help. For example, the mother and son shouting, mother or father shouting at the son, I love you. Don't you know I love you? I love you. That's why I'm shouting at you, because I love you. All right. And then looking very mad and angry. So the son or daughter cannot hear this, right? Because they cannot hear the love, because they can only see the nonverbals and the tone. Body language, nonverbals, tone will outweigh the positive. Okay. So don't these are some of the don'ts when we want to communicate, right? We don't use accusatory tones or words. We don't blame. We don't dig up the past. We don't use absolutes such as you always dirty the house. You always forget my birthday. Yeah, that's not helpful. So we want to keep our tone low and not shout, and don't say things we regret later. Okay. What we want to do is to have congruent communication, express it in a non-reactive manner where the words match the non-verbals and there's no faking or hiding. So you take into account the context, the self, and the others. How is this done? Not easy, right? Easier said than done, okay? But some practical tips, because I believe very much as a counselor that we must be practical. You can help your client, or you yourself can do things such as take deep breaths, because drink water. You can't drink water and get angry because you'll choke, okay? Count to 10. If the person is very frustrating and exasperating, count to 100. You can take time out, come back again when it's better time. Timing is everything. Can tap the fingernails, which is called EMDR. Another way, think of best words to say to preserve the relationship. The last one, I think this is quite helpful. Work on what is within your control. One small thing. Let go of what is not within your control. Right. So, for example, I've done this myself. I would clean a part of my house that is under my purview. Example, my bedroom or my sitting room. Okay. And so, likewise, if you are being frustrated, then you can actually, do something that is more within your control. Example, clean your space and let go of that, because that other family member may be rather messy and may not cooperate with you all the time. Okay, now we want to use I statements, and we want to be able to address the context, the dilemma, the struggle. You can say, I appreciate you doing this. Use non-blaming language. Work towards common goals. Negotiate. Meet in the middle. Do not be manipulative. An example will be, I do feel stressed when I'm in a dirty and cluttered house. Let us work together to clean the house. We are a team, and this will make the environment clean and pleasant for us. I know you're busy. I appreciate what you're doing for me and our family and our relationship. You can also apply this to work. Example, I do acknowledge we have our differences at work. We have different ways of doing things. However, we are a team, and let's work together to make this project a success. We may have different ways of thinking, but we can always meet in the middle. And I appreciate the strengths and the talents and the resources that you bring to this project. Okay, it is quite amazing when we use the words I appreciate. Okay, and we want to stay grounded, centered. Think about positive solutions, what moves it forward, look for win-win. Okay, so be kind and gentle to yourself, appreciate your own strengths, understand your own coping stance and others' coping stance, use I language, remember self, others in the context, negotiate for win-win. Okay, so I hope that this talk was helpful. As what Satir said, our responses to the events of life are more important than the events themselves. I want to thank Glenn again and the team for inviting me for this talk. It's an honor to be invited by him, and I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight and also taking part so actively. Do appreciate and cherish yourself. You have many gifts and talents. You are a miracle, fearfully and wonderfully made. So thank you so much, and I'll hand the time back over to Glenn. Thank you, Glenn.
Wow, Rona. I just feel like I just step out of a 3-hour lecture. We're going to take up some questions, some of the comments there. I think there are some interesting ones. Why don't we just go straight into it, okay? Rona, help us to answer some of this question. I think the first one here, how can a Satir model help with dealing with guilt and shame for someone's past mistakes?
That's a very good question. Well, for guilt and shame and past mistakes, it has to do with rumination on that negative thought that I'm bad, and I cannot forgive myself. So one of the ways that the Satir model would address that is to ask the person to let go of the past and to write a note. There are several ways that you can do it. If you're going into counseling, the counselor can help the person by getting the person to write a letter to the person they want to seek forgiveness from, or they can do empty chair work. Basically, is to seek forgiveness from the person if it is possible. If the person is still alive, if not alive, you can do empty chair work or write a letter. And then thirdly, you have to forgive yourself. And that forgiveness of self can be through journaling or letter writing or a ritual. Often through counseling, that very kind, empathetic, nurturing presence can help the person be released from that unforgiveness. Okay.
Yeah,
Number two.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Next question. What questions can we ask to help someone recognize they have choices especially if
Mm.
they're still stuck emotionally?
Oh, okay. That's another good question. You would ask a series of process questions because for Satir, her strength was that you would ask them to consider the cost, right? So for example, you would say, if you keep on, I'll give an example of maybe a girl who is in an unhappy relationship where she is battered or emotionally abused. And you can ask questions such as, what is the cost to yourself if you continue to be in this relationship? And then you empathize. You must always empathize because without the empathy, there's no connection, and the client will just keep thinking you're telling them what to do and being too directive. Besides what is the cost to yourself, ask them, how do you see yourself in the future? Where do you see yourself in 1 year's time? Where do you see yourself in this relationship in 10 years' time? Now you're 30 years old. When you're 40 years old, what do you want to be doing? Is this relationship meeting your needs? Is it helping you to become the person you want to be? If you continue on, what will happen? So you ask them the questions so that they begin to project and think into the future and to consider. Another way, what are the pros of being in this relationship? What are the cons of being in this relationship? In the wider application, what are the pros if you continue self-cutting, if you continue taking drugs, if you continue vaping, if you continue abusing alcohol? What are the cons? What is the cost to you? What is the cost to your family if you keep vaping, if you keep taking drugs, if you keep having addiction to pornography, if you keep self-cutting, if you keep having anorexia, etc.? I hope this answers the question.
Yeah, nice. It's
Right.
almost like saying do a cost benefit kind of
Yes,
analysis.
yes,
And the earlier one
correct.
is a project into the future, future
Mm,
projection as
e-
well. Yeah.
exactly, Glenn. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. And welcome.
Next one, can the Satya model be applied to a person going through depression?
Definitely. She is very, very good with depression. I've used it all the time with clients with depression because when you use the iceberg and then you use the unmet expectations, you explore that and then you explore what are their choices, right? Like how can they respond to the depression? You help them understand that it's okay that you're depressed. Don't judge yourself, but how can you cope with this depression? It may be that you won't feel good all the time, but what might make it a little bit better? What works for you? So, for example, could you, take a short walk, 15 minutes every day? Or basically ask them what works for them, right? So depression, we all know, vitamin D, sunlight, exercise, number two. Very importantly, social relationships, supportive family, supportive friends, supportive counselor, the extended family. If needed, medication. Some clinical depression, some depression are very serious. If it falls into the severe range, if you look at the Burns depression checklist, if it falls into severe range where they are suicidal, they need the medication. So you need to work with a psychiatrist and a psychologist and explore medication. Okay. And one very important thing, help take away the shame. Take away the shame because a lot of times why people don't want to seek help because they feel ashamed. There's something wrong with me. I'm defective. I'm less than. So you must say things, not must, you can consider saying things like, there's no shame to see a psychiatrist. There's no shame to take medicine. For example, I wear glasses. I'm blind without my glasses. It's really true. I cannot see the other person's face. I have 1,000 degrees, both sides. Yeah. So I will use examples like that, and then I will use self-disclosure. Okay. So that's how you join with the client, and you help them understand that. And also infusing hope. Infusing hope is very important. You can say something like, depression doesn't go away immediately, but there's always hope. You're not alone. There are other people also who had depression and there are support groups. Example, SAMH, example at the various hospitals, all the hospitals, NUH, neuroscience clinic, right? There is support group and so on and so forth. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Thank
Next.
you.
Yeah.
I thought
Welcome.
maybe just link that up to another issue, which is
Mm.
how does it help people with borderline personality disorder? And this in particular is like a young adult, a young person, 18 years old. But
Mm.
what
Mm.
BPD first, and then let's talk about youth.
Okay, borderline personality disorder has its roots in childhood because what happens with people who are borderline is that they have this need to be validated all the time. So there's a lot of manipulative behavior because of what happened to them in the childhood. Often they were abused, or there was extreme neglect. So they have this thing whereby they will pull you close and then push you away. And they may do things such as self-cut or attempt suicide, and they may be very demanding, such as saying, you don't love me, you're not there for me, and they'll say words that will intentionally to hurt. And they will do actions also which are very borderline, such as cutting themselves, or taking drugs, or medicate to attempt suicide, etc. And it's very painful for them because all this was from the childhood. Now, borderline is the hardest to treat. We need psychologists. Actually, for Satir, right, one of the principles is they must want to be treated. They must want to be treated. So for borderlines, how Satir would work is she would work with them family therapy wise, because she worked with schizophrenia, people with schizophrenia. She would work with the family and then try to make the family communicate better and to be less blaming, etc. Then she will also work with the individual to solidify the ego, because the self, right, the sense of self at the bottom is the worst. There's no sense of self. So you need to help strengthen their strengths, and then help them in each level of dealing with feelings, dealing with perceptions, dealing with their expectations of self, and responding to the world in a non-reactive way. Because their way of responding, I worked with borderline before, is very reactive. For example, they will cut themselves, and then they'll tell you, I've cut myself and I'm going to kill myself. I mean, it is oversimplifying it, because but I don't want to oversimplify it, because borderline, actually, you need a whole day, we cannot answer this in just such a short manner. But I think for youth, right? For youth, definitely, okay, for borderline and youth, because what this person is asking, you would need the family to go in, because this is a youth. So if there is a family member who is very centered and grounded, be it the mother, or it could even be a grandmother or uncle, then you need to bring that person into therapy and then be a role model. The therapist would use that person, the steady, strong person, as an ally, as another co-therapist. Okay, and then you would put boundaries. You would teach the borderline person with borderline personality, you don't have to self-cut, you don't have to medicate, you don't have to threaten, etc., to get attention and love. You can do it through other methods, and you need to teach them to self-soothe. I think dialectic behavioral therapy may be also better.
Yeah, okay. Well, still continuing on mental health issues, does Satir help trauma now? Trauma?
Yes, she does help trauma, but not as well as EMDR. I think EMDR is the gold standard, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Yeah, so Satir can help to a certain extent, but need to be trained to a very high level, because my trainer was John Benman, and he studied under Virginia Satir herself. So he did regression into the past. He helped the client. He did a demo in front of us with the client's permission, and he regressed the person to the past, to the childhood, to the state of parent and child, and then brought him back. But it's not easy. So I think easier, a more accessible way for many counselors is EMDR, because it is very structured. Satir is more free-flowing.
Very dynamic. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And very supportive, right? So it helps with securing the client. Whereas trauma EMDR can actually treat the past wounds. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think we've got time for maybe two more, right?
Okay.
So let's take a look here. Pardon me, I can't cover every questions. This one, how to help seniors, especially older siblings, negative with bad health, how to talk to them, first to listen how they feel, to tell them the choice. I think it's more a practical question, how to help seniors, maybe using Satir. Any thoughts?
Listening. Yeah, because Satir is all about connection. She's all about love. Actually, she believes, right, that a lot of times we have lost our dreams. One very powerful video she spoke about is, she says, we work with people who have stopped dreaming, who have stopped believing in themselves. So I think for the elderly, there's a lot of grief and loss, be it physical health, right, or maybe even dementia, mental decline. So why elderly maybe very grumpy and then repeat, right? Besides not feeling listened to or being lonely, I think a lot of it's the loneliness, and then there's also the frustration with the self. Because if you look at the iceberg, right, there's an expectation of self, right, to be able to function at the same level as we did in the past. Maybe, like, 70, I still want to be able to go all over the place. But then I find, my knees are no good, my back is no good, or I kena cancer or heart attack. So there's that frustration. So I think for elderly, right, social support is very important. Don't do it alone. Bring in social workers, bring in, the agency of integrated care, bring them to daycare center. You can't do it alone. Yeah, with the elderly, you really need that kind of whole ecosystem. My mom, when she had dementia, we love her, and then we also bring her to daycare center and then church. That really was quite healing, lah. I think. Yeah. So even though the dementia didn't get better, but we were able to cope. Like what Satir says, right? The problem is not the problem, it's how we cope with the problem. And we were very blessed by the love and support of like the nurses and the social workers and the volunteers and all that. Yeah. So I encourage this person who has asked this question, go and seek social support.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe last
Welcome.
question here. I think this question
Okay.
can round things up. What are some
Okay.
recommended reading material, study literature, if you want to learn more about Satir?
Oh, okay. I can copy and paste from my slides into the chat box, because I think I went quite fast, right?
Yeah,
So
there was a comment
sorry.
on that.
So sorry. I know I like give you all so much, but that's because I love the topic so much. So please pardon me if I went too fast. I am a bit enthusiastic.
There will be the video replay, so no worries.
Yes.
We're going
Okay.
to edit the video replay for those who want it as well. So okay, maybe Rona, you can cut and paste whatever you need to put it in the chat
Sure.
box while I
Sure.
begin to wind things up over here.